the Pilgrims and the people that founded the nation that were biblically driven, why do you think that they were going against the king? Because they had biblical maturity. Because everybody says, because it says in the Bible that you are to follow the king. I have appointed the king for your own good. But God does that because you need a ruler, because you're a baby. Now, the kings then automatically assume that they all in their lineage are in touch with God, which is not the case. Some are. You can recognize the ones that are. They're morally good. They're morally sound judgment. But the fact is that the Pilgrims had matured to where God was trying to get the Israelites to mature to. But the Israelites, they were new in their faith, really. I mean, that's why they were kept in the desert for so long. They had trouble just even, God being gone or Moses being gone for just a moment. They freaked out. The Pilgrims, on the other hand, they were way more mature. The Bible was always going to be a continuing story. It's not like it just ended and then Revelation someday comes. America was the next story in the biblical story. And so the point is the reason that I've said it before, that Jesus had so many issues with the Pharisees, is because they were not biblically maturing. They were basing everything off of rituals. There comes a point when if you're in, God, you're walking with him. Even if, and I guess I say biblical maturity because I mean the biblical God, but it's more just that you're staying in touch with him every day. Then he does give you guidance. That's crazy to this world, but it's true. So that's the reason this country was given the freedoms it was. Because otherwise, if you just follow what the Pharisees do or what everybody says is that, no, you shouldn't go against the king, then none of the Pilgrims should have, and which upset the king. But I don't think the king really understood that, no, God's role was always for the people to get to a place where God was their king. That didn't mean no governing authorities, but that's the reason America was founded on the idea of no kings, because of being, we had biblically mature people. But if over time the country falls more away from that, then there's not biblical maturity. When I have Catholics telling me that, no, we're the first church, I think, okay, so you're totally immature because it's all about the ego to you. You just want to fight about you being the first church, not recognizing that it's not the kind of church Jesus would support. There was a man I was listening, I guess, you really have to dig into our history. There was a lot of preachers that brought revival here, and there was a Methodist that had a dream. He was one of the big ones that brought revival to the colonies. This was before 1776. And he had a dream, and so in this dream he had died and he'd gone up to heaven, and he couldn't wait to see his Methodist brothers and sisters. And so when he got to the gate, he said, I can't wait to see my Methodist brothers and sisters. God said, there's no Methodist here. Well, why do you think Methodist? Why do you think denomination? Why do you think that it's all about that when none of those denominations are even mentioned? So he learned something from that it was about walking with Christ, which is why our founders knew that it wasn't about denominations, even though a ton of denominations came in. The titles didn't matter. And we now live under a country where titles is everything to people. Even though all the experts that are titled experts don't really live up to it. They don't really show that they're expert of anything. It's because they have a bunch of letters after their name. So what the founders knew that they didn't was that the titles were not important. They weren't. The only way to truly have a free country and not let it fall away into the same socialist, authoritarian system or communist system was that the people had to biblically be mature enough to realize it's about self-governance. And that's always what God was looking for in people, is when can you recognize the times that you need to break the rules and go against the king? Because the Pharisees, they would never do that. The Pharisees were all about the rituals, which is why Jesus ran in with them so many times. Like, you're just so not getting it. So even though a lot of people in this country don't want to hear that and don't like any of that stuff, it doesn't change the fact that it's true. And there's a reason why. I guess I've heard it said, I guess, did it come from Q? I don't know. I didn't follow Q. But that the end isn't for everyone. It doesn't mean the end of everything. It means really you should look at the end being the new beginning. Not everybody will be meant for the new beginning, let's say. Because if you step back from all of your titles, those that, think that's what it's all about, then eventually, if that's what your whole life's been about, is just what your title is, and it's not about seeking God and seeking for righteousness. And I don't mean self-righteousness, God righteousness, doing our best to do that, then that's what God's looking for. That's what the Pilgrims were. That's what the people early on in this country were, which is why they were successful in their missions, which is why the preachers back then were speaking about, they recognized that there were times you don't just follow the rule of everything God says. I'm not saying within reason. You have to understand when it's time for you to recognize when God wants you to see that he doesn't want you to forever stay under a king. He only puts you under a king if you're still immature in the ways of understanding him. So I know that may not make sense to some people and they think that's nonsense, but that's truly the way America fell, is the biblical maturity we used to have in this country. And it wasn't all about denominations and my church was first and, who has the most members or the most parishioners, or it wasn't about how big your mega church is. All of them have taken, all the denominations in some way have taken America off course. And the founders themselves knew it was not about the denominations. It was about your personal relationship with God. You're seeking that personal relationship with God, and you're seeking for righteousness in this country.